Hello everyone, my name is Anthony Sato and I'm the designer and artist and creator of Dice Odyssey, and I kind of want to put this video together for you guys that goes over the gameplay rules. I wanted to do that because it's in the Kickstarter, but it's quite a bit of text, and maybe it'd be easier to see some of that stuff in action or just to hear someone explaining it. Um, so I'm just going to kind of dive in here. Just as a summary of what Dice Odyssey is, in case you haven't read that part, Dice Odyssey is what I would describe as a tabletop and RPG hybrid. Um, it's set in a world that is I can call what I would consider dungeon punk, and it's kind of like fantasy themed elements, but way cooler than that than what you'd see standard. So, for example, in this case, this guy's based off of a wizard, but he loads his arm with magical bullets to do different spells and things like that. And over here we have a character who's a skeleton, which obviously is very common in fantasy. But it's funny. It's not often that you'd play as a skeleton, and this guy in particular has very much a punk-like attitude. And then over here, of course, we have another of my favorite characters. She's a mermaid. I call her the Rocket Knight, actually. But she's a mermaid and she's in a mech, and of course the mech is awesome and has a scary smile. But anyways, and what you do in this game is you play as a guild of heroes. So each of these characters are all part of the same guild, and they're competing in what's called the dungeon games. And that's basically these wizards come together and they put together these quests for these different guilds to compete. And the big thing here, and actually this is kind of what I can get into to start off the bat, is you're fighting against the clock. And this is kind of a crazy looking prototype. It's kind of supposed to be a countdown timer. The green means you're doing well with your time. Red, as it turns more into a red color, you're running out of time. And this is actually very temporary artwork. I was toying with some different graphics, and this is kind of where I stopped, but I need to spend a little more time on this. But either way, what this represents is you're given a quest. So for example, the one that I like to use as an example is the first one that I play tested, and it's the idea that the characters find themselves teleported to a location, and they're on the outside of a castle, and the castle is throwing a ball at that moment. The players have to infiltrate the castle, and they have to track down a spy who is in the ballroom, and she's actually dancing in the ball, and they have to interrogate her and get information from her, and then escape with her, kidnap her, escape with her without being harmed, and to get out without being noticed. And so not only do they have to do that, but they have to do that within a time limit, and that time limit will be created by the adventures, the pre-written adventures. So in this case, it starts off at 10. So this would be 3, 4, 5. So we'd start right here. So the characters will start with 10 turns, and each time they do something in the game, they use a round, generally speaking. Now, it's possible that you may have an idea that might take more than one round. So, for example, and a lot of times you don't want to do that. So, let's say you're looking for something, and you could either be creative about how you look for it in one round, or you could just say, I'm going to explore the whole room, take as long as it needs. I'm not going to do anything special to speed it up. In which case, the storyteller could say, well, that's going to take you 3 rounds to do it. So in this game, you're always trying to manage your time. And it's also interesting because even though it's best for each character to take 1 round of time per turn, it may happen that that may not be the case. So perhaps you have a character who maybe he does decide that he just wants to look around for 3 turns. Well, then he could take his rounds, and then while he's looking, the other players could then go and take the rounds. So this is the countdown timer. To me, it's very simple, but it adds a very cool element to the game in terms of really putting that heat on the players, and also it gives you that part of RPG games that's kind of fun, where you're pressured to do crazy things sometimes, dangerous things, to get it done quicker, and so it's really fun to have that pressure on your back. The other thing that comes along with the game, and this is still what I would consider in the exploration part of the rules, as opposed to the combat. So exploration is basically the entire game. Combat is when you actually get into a fight, the rules change considerably to be more of a dice strategy, kind of a board game feel. But in this section, the other thing I want to talk about is arcane keys. And actually, I don't believe in this prototype I have them yet. At this point we've just been using the wound counters and putting them in our hands to represent the arcane keys. But basically, arcane keys are these little goodies that are floating around the world. Actually, I'm going to zoom in here while I talk, so if you want to look. But arcane keys are these little goodies. They're literally glowing magical keys that are floating around as the players are doing their quest. They're trying to get things done. They're going to see all of these little keys, and they can be kind of in funny places or difficult places, but they're always some kind of a trial or puzzle to get these things. And it's important that they get these keys because not only do they have to finish within the time limit, but ultimately, and it's kind of serves as a high score mechanic, but ultimately if you want to get higher than 5th place, you have to get more points, and you get those extra points by collecting these keys. So if you have extra time at the end, instead of finishing early, you actually want to utilize that time by going around and collecting those keys, because that ultimately is what gets you up to the 1st place. And so if players finish a quest and they finish in 5th, but they do it within the time limit, that's great. But you know what? It's just as fun to retry the quest. Even though it's the same thing, it's actually quite interesting. People will try different tactics, and some people will get kind of crazy and they do funny things since they know a little bit more. But they can also try to get more of those keys so they can get 1st place. So there's a lot of replayability in that, and that's also something that's kind of unique for role-playing games. But you see it in other systems. I'm gonna go to the skull. I know that camera is kind of crazy. Let's see. So in the exploration mode, and kind of what you think of when you think of normal RPGs, I want to talk a little bit about how dice are used in this. And like in a lot of other role-playing games, there are 8 skills in this game, and whenever you attempt to do something, depending on what you do, it's going to utilize a different skill. So athletics, dungeoneering, fortitude, these are each different. So athletics means, let's say you're trying to jump over a pit or something like that. You use athletics to do it, as opposed to, for dungeoneering, that would be something like finding a trap or picking a lock, those kind of things. And let's say you're taking a dungeoneering roll to disable a trap, then what the storyteller would say, okay, that's a dungeoneering roll of, let's say 6. 4 is the standard roll, so 6 means it's a little bit more difficult. And what you would do is you would take 3 of your dice, that's standard, and if you had any attribute cards over here for dungeoneering, which actually I have 2. If you see here, this one says dungeoneering up here and down here, just in case that gets hidden. So dungeoneering, I actually have 2 of these attribute cards, so because of that I'll get to draw 2 more dice, and because I only have 1, I'm going to actually draw one from the main center bag there, which I have to put back. So I'll go ahead and roll these, and then what I want to do here is count these points. So I got 3, 4. So I only got 4, so I missed it by 2. But actually, this here is a crit. Anything that has a face is considered a crit. And so what it is I roll a crit dice over here. So I'm gonna grab one and pull it, because even though I wasn't planning on talking about this, it happened. So it's really cool. So I have to roll a crit dice. Okay, sweet. So actually, as I see here, that I've actually now got 6 because this gave me 2 more points. Of course, these will not be lit like that in the actual physical game. This is just because the dice are a little harder to see because it's not real dice, so I made them light up a little bit. So I would also get a loot card actually because of this icon, but I'm not going to go into that part quite yet. So I did roll a 6, which means I completed my mission. Now, here's the thing. If I would have rolled, let's see, what was I looking for? Dungeoneering. Okay, so if I would have gotten a crit, if one of these would have gotten a crit, let's see if I can roll until I get one here. I might need to just flip this. There it is. Okay, so if I rolled one of these guys, I got a crit. If I look here next to dungeoneering, I see one of these little minions. That means that if my minion dice rolls a crit and I'm doing a dungeoneering roll, then I would actually get a +2. And you can see kind of here they're each associated with something else. I don't know that, in fact, I don't think this is going to be the final look for how I'm going to display these. But for right now, for playtesting it, it's very effective. So if you're making a luck roll and you happen to have dragon dice, then you're gonna have your eyes out for looking for the dragon crit, because that'll give you a +2 to do that. So in this case, I would have gotten 8. Actually, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would have 10 altogether here because this guy, the face itself, I get 2 for these 2 points, but the face itself gives me 2. So I would have actually 10 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, yes, 10. So I would have easily passed that. So the reason that's important is because as you're going through the game, you can customize your dice by buying them. That's the number one way of doing it, is by purchasing them. That happens about halfway through your mission, and then at the end, you're going to be getting gold. Like right here, I rolled a gold, so I already have one. And so primarily, and I don't want to go in the rules of the store. That you can look in the rule book for, but basically you can pick out dice to purchase those particular types of dice. So that's a good way. So for example, if you want to customize your character to be better at dungeoneering and athletics, then it'd be good to get more of these dice. So maybe you don't want to have the Iron Forge dice and you'd rather start specializing in one, or maybe you want to have them all. That way you're a little bit more jack of all trades. So that's how the dice and the attribute cards work for the game. Let's see here. I think I'm just going to go into the combat system since we're over here. So it's interesting to kind of describe this, and I've thought about the best way to describe this because this is very different. So, like I said, the combat system in this game is very much like a board game. It's very much a board game. It's very different from other role-playing games, and the way that starts is even in the fact that most role-playing games, your character has basic stats that do not change. They stay the same. So I'm talking about things like hit points, or maybe your base defense, your base attacks. Those things will always stay the same. If you're a wizard, you're going to be easy to hit and easy to kill. If you're a knight or warrior, then you're going to be a lot hardier, better at attacking. So those always stay the same, but that's not the case in Dice Odyssey. I did, obviously I did that on purpose. I wanted to make it so that you could essentially, you could be riskier at sometimes, but leave yourself open for attack. But then, your other partners and things like that, they can help to defend you. So there's a lot of that teamwork that will happen. But those stats they actually fluctuate, and that happens by choosing at the beginning a combat card. And here are the 2 combat cards that the caster arm, that's his name, that's his working name anyways for now. These are the 2 that he starts off with, and as you go, you can pay a gold to switch these out with his other abilities. He's got them over here. They're in this pile right there, so I have other abilities for him. But these are the 2 he has right now. And basically, I choose one of these, and these stats here, and I'm going to go kind of flip out a little bit there. But if you notice, for each of these characters here, whichever combat card they choose, it's basically like assigning your core stats. So you don't have a base attack. It's whatever your card says. So if you have a card like this that's defensive based, then you may not have any base attack. There's nothing. It's not your base attack plus this card. It's just this card, what it says. And so you really do have to work together with your team to make sure that you have everything covered. In this case, the Rocket Knight, she's very much a defender of her team, so she has a lot of abilities where she may not have much attack. So I'm going to go back to the caster arm here. So the first thing that you're going to do is go to pick one of these, and you have your basic stats. So I have an attack +2. I don't want to get too much into what everything is, more general speaking, because again, you can look in the rulebook to get a better idea of that. But you're going to choose this card. Let's say I'm going to choose One Punch. Okay, it's the most powerful, the most simplistic ability too. So I would get 3 attack, and we'll talk about weaknesses a little bit later. But also, every time you choose one, you get to choose one of these bonus abilities down here. So let's say, as you can see, he's pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to choose 3 attack, and I'm going to choose this one right here. So that gives me +2 more attack. So I have 5 attack. So the next thing that you're going to do in combat is a loot card. And actually, I probably should have started with these because the first thing that you do is you see the monsters. So I'm just going to pull these guys out. Let's just say for right now, I'm just going to go here. Zoom in a little bit. So these are my monsters here. So the first thing you're going to do is lay these out. And I don't want to get into all the stats here, but as you get to know the game better, then you're going to be able to look at these and kind of figure out how you need to build your character. And then you're also going to reference the other players at the table and say like, what do you want to do? What can you do? A lot of the teamwork will be happening at the table, which is really cool and really fun. That being said, after the monsters are pulled, you pull 4 dice. I'm just going to take 4 out. Right now I only have 4. You can get up to 6 after you visit the store. So basically the first time you play the game, you'll have 4 for most of it, but by the end you probably should have 6 dice, and then most of the other games, because you can play this game up to 4 times sequentially, you're going to have 6 for most of the game. So, but I have 4 for right now. So what you do is you want to roll these, and what you're looking for are points. So there's a point right there, and this one has 2 points, and this one has 1. So this is the only one that did not roll. Now, the way that crits normally work, I showed you before, is that I would draw a crit dice and roll it, but this is the only time where it doesn't work that way. What happens is this lets me either draw another dice out of my bag and roll it, or re-roll one of these. So I don't actually have any dice in my bag right now. I only have 4, so I'm going to go ahead and re-roll this. And I have another one, which is sweet, so I'm going to try it one more time. Come on, come on. Okay, so he has, I'm going to re-roll myself, actually. Okay, so I still didn't get it. Now the dragon dice you can see here are 3. That was really unlucky, but they are a little bit harder to get, the sides, but they're very, very, very powerful. So, anyways, so I have these 3. So what you want to do is you want to look at which of these abilities you want to activate. So any purple dice can activate any purple item. These are minion items. This is a minion dice. So I have 2. Now in this case, I have 2 and 2 activate, so I'm going to just activate both of those. And then I have my Iron Forge dice I can activate too. Now notice the number of points. So this one has 2 points, which would allow me to activate an ability that's worth 2, or 2 abilities worth 1. In this case, I can't do that because there's only 1 ability here. But there may be, like the elf, the Fae dice, for example, they have, let's see if I can find it. Does this one have Fae? Yes, okay. So here's a Fae. So in this one, if I were to roll 2, I could activate 2 1-point abilities. So I'm going to go back here. So I activate him for 2, let's just say. It gives me +3 attack. And I'm going to activate him for 1. Now this one's a little bit more complicated ability, so I'm not really going to go into that. But what I'm going to do is take one of my... I'm going to mark this here. And, oh yeah, that's right. I have this guy over here. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to put these back in my bag, because I do need these to roll. Thank you for sticking with me here. It's... okay, so now after that, I can now choose based off of what the baddies look like, what the baddies look like, what my fellow punks, as I call them, the characters, what they're going to do, how we're going to work together. We kind of plan all that, and then I would basically, when I take my turn, then I'd have my stats. So for example, without explaining whatever each one does, there's really 3 of them: attack, defense, and positioning, and they relate to each other in different ways. Well, I can just explain. I might as well. Just attack is basically, it's what it sounds like. Attack and defense are what they sound like. So if I have +5 attack, I roll 5 dice, and all the points on the dice adds up. So if I roll 5 dice, you know, if it's a really good roll, I might end up getting like 7 points or something out of that, because if I get crits and things like that. And then the hero or baddie would then roll however many dice in defense they had, and then you just take the 2 of those and subtract them. Now positioning works a little bit different in the fact that in order to attack somebody, if you have to have equal positioning to them. Everyone has 0 positioning to start with. If I have +1 positioning and the monster has 0 positioning, the monster may not attack me at all. If it's the opposite, it's the same way. So positioning is very, very important, because you can gain positioning, which allows you to attack people with higher positioning. It also makes you invulnerable to people without positioning, but you can also subtract positioning from people permanently. So you can either gain it or subtract it. So in this case, one of his abilities will subtract positioning from a monster. So if a monster had, you know, 1 positioning or 2 positioning, he could take it away from that monster, so that someone else could actually hit them. He could hit them, and someone else could hit them as well. So sometimes positioning can get really high, so you might have to work together or use items. So basically what I want to do here is add up all of the abilities, and I do have on here, these little bars can help you to count. You don't need to use them if you don't want to, but they can. So for example, you have attack, defense, and positioning up here. Notice how you can have positioning positive positioning, like your own positioning, and you can even have negative positioning, meaning you can subtract from whoever you're attacking. So, but this is just as you need. I noticed that a lot of people in playtesting don't use that. It's just easier to count. So let's say I have 3 attack plus I pick one of the power-ups down here, so I have 5, and then over here I'm going to use this attack, and I'll have 2 defense when I need it. And right now this one says if the target has 0 positioning, then I get to subtract 4 attack from that. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But right here I'd have 8 attack between these 3. So, you know, I would draw out my 4. I only have 4. I'm going to go ahead and roll those. And then I would draw 4 out of here as well. And roll those. And then I would count all these. Now, it's unfortunate I didn't get a crit, but I did get 3, wow, 6, 7. Okay, so 7, and then I got a gold. So then I would have a gold like that, which is awesome. And then I would go over here, and let's say his defense is 5. I'm just going to, just as an example, draw one more. I'm not being too picky about it right now. How many did I get? 7? Okay. And then he has, oh man, he's got 2 crits on there. He's got 2, and then he's got 2 of these. Those, and that's actually, it's hard to see, that's a 3, so 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I hit him, but only for 1. So the monster would only take 1 damage, and he has 5 hit points. This guy's a really difficult monster, actually. If I hit this guy, that might be different. I might, because he had 1 less dice too, so I might have actually been able to take him out. But those guys are a little bit tougher. So let's see. So that's a general idea of how combat cards, which are these guys, and loot cards, how they work. Now, loot cards are destructible. After you use them once, you need to, I suggest rotating them, but you need to notify somehow that you've used it once. The second time you use it, it actually breaks. So when you're getting loot cards through these kind of things, like I got a loot card there, a lot of times it's good to replace those things that are about to break, but you may not want to do that if it's something that is really valuable for your character. Okay, so I want to get into, there's just a couple more things. I want to talk about weakness. Maybe I'll go to the Rocket Knight, because I've been looking at the same character for so long. So the Rocket Knight, who is really awesome, she's a support character, as opposed to the Caster Arm, who's an attack character, which is a lot like what they sound like. So support is going to help support the team, and attack is going to help to do damage and those kind of things. It's recommended that you choose one of each of those, at least one on your team of an attack and a support, just because of the way the game's balanced. It's probably better to have that, but you could try different combinations. So anyways, I want to talk about weakness a little bit. So there are aspects, different aspects. There are 7 different aspects, and those are these things. So this is an ice aspect, and I believe both cards are ice. Now each item here, like these Lucky Charm guys, which by the way, these are all roughs, obviously, at this point. But the Lucky Charm guys, they're wind. So then I have earth and wind. What's up here? Okay, so ice again and wind. Okay, so I have different, these are the different aspects. Now monsters, let me go to my baddies here. They're going to have different weaknesses. So a lot of times I try to make it a little bit clever. So in this case, this guy's weakness is actually piercing or stab, which I think makes sense because he's a Cyclops. So if you stab the Cyclops' eye, he's kind of useless, right? So that's his weakness. Now, there's no way really for the Rocket Knight to know that, but you can make guesses based off of certain things. So for example, let's say this Bomblin guy, right? If it has fire on it, it's kind of likely that they may be weak to ice, just because that makes sense. In this case, a bomb, if you hit it with ice, he's not going to be able to blow up or anything. So here we go. Players, he is of course weak to ice. Of course, I knew that, but the players will not be able to see the back. They'll only be able to see the front. So weakness is very important. Now, notice that this says ice times 2. Now that's not always the case. If we look over here, this one says wind, just wind times 1. But it does say add. Down here it says add slash. Slash is another aspect, because you have 4 elements and you have 3 physical aspects. So you have slash, stab, and smash. Those are 3. And actually, if I go to the Skullhead here, his kick butt, which is a really pretty solid ability, it actually has 3 aspects on it, all 3 physical aspects, which is pretty cool. So if they're weak to any of those things, you're going to hit that. Now, oops, let me go back to here. Okay, but notice this is times 2. Okay, so if, let's just say this were a normal ice, what would happen if I hit that weakness? Normally, I would get what this says here, and I would get one of these bonuses. But if you hit it twice, something really cool happens, where you actually go into like a overpowered mode. And so I'm gonna flip it, and it gets much more powerful here. So here, actually, if you see each punk, they're called punks because the guild name is Dungeon Punks. So everyone refers to them as punks. So each punk, so each other player, each other hero on the table, all of you, including the Rocket Knight, get 5 defense, which is actually a lot of defense. And so it's kind of her super mode. So down here too, actually, I think it'd be easier to illustrate it with one punch, because one punch is the most direct. It's just the most flat damage attack. So if I flip it, he's got 10 attack all of a sudden, and he has reroll 4. It's basically the combination of all of these. So that happens when you hit the weakness twice. So you can do that by either having a ×2, and there's quite a few of these cards have ×2, but you can also do that by using 2 of the same item. So if I use both of these on a baddie, this would be 2 wind items, so that would also trigger the card to flip. So, or here's an ice, so you can do that way. So weakness is a very big thing in this game, and just because if you hit the weakness, it's really cool how powerful your character gets, and you pretty much clean up combat at that point. So let me see. I'm trying to think what else. So taking wounds. Okay, so that's a big deal. It's pretty basic in terms for the heroes. Okay, so if a baddie attacks you, he rolls attack dice. You roll your defense dice. If any of that gets through, you don't have hit points in this game. You just take a wound at that point, and that's really bad, because each time your character is wounded, anytime you don't want any hit points to get past, any damage to get past, because a wound makes you lose. Every player loses a round on the timer, and that can be really. Sorry, I need to go over here. That can be really detrimental. That could easily make you fail. So if we were in a combat right now, and one of the characters took a wound, that's it. They all go down. And if that happened again, if another character took another wound, as you can see, before you know it, you're going to have no time to actually, because after the combat's done, you still have to get the rest of your quest finished. So I'm going to go back to the rocket. So taking wounds is really, really bad. So you really want to make sure that if you can't defend yourself, one of your team members or an item or something defends you. Because again, you could, if you just had positioning and the monster doesn't have positioning, that's an easy way, even if it's only one, to just reduce the damage. So really you want to make sure that, here's the other aspect too. Okay, so in terms of hitting monsters, all the players act first. They can act in any order, but they act first, and this again is very unique to this game. And I could explain, I guess, why I implemented it, but that's not as important. That's more designer talk, I guess. But all the players act first, and then the monsters go. Now, you hopefully have killed all the monsters by the time the turn comes around. But in this game, even though you took their hit points away and you've defeated them, they're not actually dead yet. They get to do an attack. You could think of it as like their last attack before they die, however you want to imagine it. The thing is, they still get to attack you. So if you were to just go all out and kill them entirely, but you left yourself completely open, then they'll just attack you, and then you'll get 3 wounds or however many, and then you're going to probably end up losing the game. So the thing that the question is, why attack the monsters at all? Why do you want to do damage to the monsters at all? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. One is obviously when a monster is defeated, if half the monsters or more are defeated, their hit points are gone, in other words, by the time they go, then the combat will be over after they take their turn. It doesn't go into second round of combat. Again, in other RPGs that doesn't matter. In Dice Odyssey it does, because you're fighting the time. Okay, so you don't want to take that time. But it also works because it's not fun to have a combat in an RPG game that lasts 2 hours. So this keeps the combats down from 5 to 15 minutes, just depending on how well the players know the combat, and how if it's a boss battle or things like that. But generally speaking, it's like 5 to 10 minutes. So let's see. Okay, so you want to make sure to kill them so that the combat doesn't go into more rounds. But also, when you do take their hit points away, it takes their special away, and that's really, really important. And down here on the 2 cards, these are their specials. So Island Face is a little bit different in that sense, and so maybe I should probably I'll use the Schneff, who, by the way, he feeds flaming pancakes to people. So he's pretty brutal too. I mean, basically, he can heal 4 hit points amid the bad guys in any way he wants to. Now, we'll just start with the Cyclops because his is really easy. All baddies, including himself, gain +1 attack and +1 positioning. So his positioning is actually 1, and his attack is actually 3. Then the Schneff doesn't normally have an attack, but as long as the Cyclops' ability is there, he will actually attack, which could be detrimental because now he has a +1 positioning and attack. And again, he just have to get 1 hit. That's all it has to be. So if someone doesn't have any defense dice at all, and they're relying on that 1 positioning, the Schneff, because the Cyclops, that could be it. So that could be a big deal. Taking the 2 hit points away from the Cyclops, though, removes this on both. So now neither of them have that. And that could be really big for the Schneff. Now the Schneff is really, he's really chunky. He's got a lot of hit points and a lot of defense. But you want to do that because let's say you have 3 monsters, 2 of them are defeated, but the Schneff is still up. Well, when he uses that special, he will revive both. He can revive both because he can spread it out amid either guy. So he could revive potentially both monsters, meaning that you're going to have to fight to get them again. So in this case, you really have to beat the Schneff in order to continue and not keep losing rounds. That being said, I suggest in general the storyteller can do whatever he wants. But the rules are if it's half or more, then it's done, unless it's a boss battle and you want to finish the combat. But no matter what, even if you take the hit points away from the monster, you don't remove them from the combat. You have to defeat, if it's a boss battle and you have to defeat all of them, then they're going to fight every single round. They're going to attack you. Now, they're not going to have their specials. Let's say you have 4 guys and only one of them has any hit points. Well, the other 3 guys, they're not going to have any special. Their specials aren't going to be there. But they're still going to have whatever base attack they have. So you still might get hit by all 4. So each round of combat, what happens in other RPGs is there's kind of this, like at the beginning, it's like really well matched, and then 1 guy or 2 guys fall, and then it's just kind of this slow whittling down. You know that you're going to win. That's not really the case here. It's always going to be a one-on-one. Every turn is going to be really exciting, and you have to be careful about the decisions that you make. And a lot of times it does come down to the dice, just like any good role-playing game does. So I think that's I think I've pretty much covered everything in here. I mean, I was thinking about covering crits, but I did kind of do that already. So hopefully this has helped. This video has been a lot longer probably than just reading the text, but I think I've been able also to explain it in more depth. So I hope that this helped. If you have any more questions, just feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll try to get to those as I can. So anyways, I'm really hope that you'll back this, just because I mean I not only do I want this to be in existence, but I really am excited and proud of this product. And I mean, it's just one of those things where I playtest parts of it, but when I playtested it all put together, I was just blown away and just really excited. So it's a very unique system. It's really cool to see how the dice are just so well implemented in every area. And I haven't actually had the chance to test a physical copy yet, and that's so really vital to this game, to the experience, is picking up those dice and rolling those handfuls of dice. So I really look forward to being able to do that, hopefully, if it's funded, with the playtest copy. But this has worked out great, this Tabletopia has, because if I've had to change a die or something like that, I can update all my dice. If I did that on some cheap prototype at home, I'd have to, I don't know, repaint it or whatever to those dice. It would be pretty horrible. So thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this video was helpful. So thank you.